Man is the only creature who refuses to be what he is. Imagine this. You wake up, scroll through endless content, check your messages, maybe even smile at a meme. You eat, you work, you entertain yourself. You survive another day. And yet, somewhere deep beneath all the distractions, you feel it. That subtle, gnawing emptiness. The kind of silence that doesn't come from your surroundings, but from within. You're surrounded by everything humans have ever wanted. Technology, convenience, abundance. You can speak to anyone, anywhere. Watch anything, anytime. Eat whatever you crave. So why does life still feel hollow? What if the problem isn't your job, your relationship, or your productivity? What if the emptiness isn't a symptom, but the core? This isn't burnout. This isn't boredom. It's something far more existential. A spiritual malnourishment in a world obsessed with consumption. Your soul, if such a thing exists, has been put on mute, not by accident, but by design. We've built a society that trades depth for speed, silence for stimulation, and meaning for metrics. A world where you're constantly performing for invisible audiences, chasing achievements that feel increasingly meaningless once attained. And here's the paradox. The more we consume, the more we feel consumed. The more we try to escape the void, the deeper it becomes. Ask yourself, why do moments of stillness feel uncomfortable? Why do you panic when the noise fades? Why does success feel suspiciously similar to exhaustion? Perhaps the real addiction isn't to our phones, our vices, or our pleasures. Perhaps it's to avoidance, a constant escape from the self we're terrified to meet in silence. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And maybe that's why we stay busy, because introspection is the one task that doesn't come with a dopamine hit or a social reward. It's raw, it's confronting, it's brutally honest. But what if the very thing you're avoiding holds the answer you've been looking for? What if the emptiness you feel isn't a flaw in you, but a scream from a forgotten part of your humanity? We'll dig into this. We'll uncover the psychological mechanisms and societal illusions that keep you trapped in the cycle. But first, ask yourself one last question. When was the last time you truly felt alive? What if emptiness isn't the enemy, but the messenger? You've been told that fulfillment is a destination, a result of doing the right things. Getting a job, finding love, building wealth, staying productive, being liked. But here's the hidden truth. You've been programmed to chase everything but yourself. Let's trace the root. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the rejected parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge, the thoughts we bury, the instincts we deny, the pain we suppress. Society rewards the mask, the performance, but the soul withers in the dark. From childhood, you're trained to disconnect. You're told to be polite instead of honest, to be successful instead of authentic, to ignore your inner world unless it brings results. And so, you adapt. You become a curated version of yourself, one optimized for approval, not meaning. Nietzsche warned us, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But what happens when your why isn't yours? When it's been handed to you by algorithms, advertising, and social expectations? Enter the age of hyperstimulation. Your attention is the most valuable resource in the modern economy, and every platform, app, and notification is engineered to keep it hijacked. But attention, when constantly outsourced, starves introspection. And without introspection, there is no self. Think of it this way. Every time you scroll, binge, swipe, or consume without awareness, you deepen a trench between who you are and who you appear to be. This trench becomes the source of your disconnection, the emptiness that haunts you in silence. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that human desire was an endless treadmill, that satisfaction was fleeting, and suffering was embedded into the structure of wanting. In his eyes, pleasure is not fulfillment. It's merely the brief absence of pain. So if you're waiting for life to click into place, once you get that job, that house, that body, that lover, you're chasing illusions manufactured to keep you running. But this goes deeper than philosophy. It's embedded in your brain. Psychologically, your mind is wired for survival, not peace. It evolved to scan for threats, seek novelty, and secure status. But in the modern world, this wiring turns on itself. Instead of avoiding predators, you avoid boredom. Instead of hunting food, you hunt dopamine. Instead of tribal safety, you chase digital validation. You've become trapped in a loop. React, consume, numb, repeat. Dr. Gabor Mate, an expert in trauma and addiction, explains that addiction isn't about pleasure, it's about pain. The pain of disconnection, the pain of not being seen, the pain of not knowing who you are when everything goes quiet. And modern society, it's an addiction machine. It teaches you to silence discomfort with distractions, instead of using discomfort as a guide. So instead of listening to your emptiness, you medicate it with temporary highs. But the void isn't asking for noise, it's asking for presence. Jean-Paul Sartre famously said, "Man is condemned to be free." That freedom terrifies us, because it means the burden of meaning rests entirely on our shoulders. And when you outsource that burden to tradition, to culture, to ideology, you lose the very thing that makes life real: authentic engagement with the self. The core of your suffering may not be the world itself, but the way you've been taught to relate to it. You've internalized a system that treats your worth as a score, your identity as a brand, and your emotions as weaknesses. But here's the twist. This emptiness isn't your failure. It's your chance. Because only when everything superficial stops working do you begin the descent into something real. And that descent is where truth lives. You might think the emptiness is just a phase, a feeling that passes. But what if it's not? What if it's shaping everything, silently, invisibly? Emptiness doesn't just sit still. It doesn't wait politely in the corner of your mind. It festers. It metastasizes. It becomes your lens. And once your inner world is hollow, the outer world starts to echo that hollowness back to you. You start chasing things not because you want them, but because you can't bear the silence without them. You date people not to connect, but to escape yourself. You work not to create, but to distract. You consume endlessly, hoping one more purchase, one more click, one more like will finally fill the void. But nothing satisfies. Not because life is meaningless, but because you've been taught to look for meaning in things that were never meant to hold it. You begin to perform instead of live. You curate instead of feel. You scroll past your own soul, thinking the next reel might bring it back. But behind the mask of "I'm fine" is a quiet desperation, the fear that maybe you've never actually been yourself. And this is where the real damage begins. When you're disconnected from your inner world, you become vulnerable to external definitions of value. You start believing that likes equal love, that busyness equals worth, that image equals identity. Cognitive dissonance sets in, where your actions no longer align with your inner truth because you've buried that truth so deep you barely remember what it sounds like. Your anxiety? It's not random. It's the alarm bell of a soul screaming to be felt. Your depression? It's not weakness. It's your psyche grieving the life you were supposed to live, but never dared to claim. Your burnout? It's not just from overwork. It's from underbeing. The modern world has normalized emotional malnutrition. You're expected to operate like a machine while pretending to be happy, to post your best angles while dying inside, to function in a society built to exhaust, exploit, and distract. And so the cycle continues. Numbness becomes your default state. Distraction becomes your drug of choice. Inauthenticity becomes your armor. But here's the most dangerous part. You lose the ability to distinguish between real fulfillment and temporary relief. You start mistaking comfort for peace, entertainment for joy, distraction for healing. And before you know it, you've built a life that looks full on the outside, but is spiritually bankrupt on the inside. It's cultural. We are a generation fluent in aesthetics, but illiterate in depth. Masters of communication, yet starving for connection. Dredged in information, but dehydrated of wisdom. We celebrate productivity while quietly drowning in isolation. We idolize success stories while ignoring their emotional wreckage. Our society rewards the symptoms of disconnection: hyper-competitiveness, perfectionism, toxic independence, shallow validation. You weren't born to be a brand. You weren't born to be efficient. You were born to be whole. But wholeness requires pain. It requires silence. It requires facing the very void you've spent your life avoiding. That's why most people don't break free. Not because they can't, but because they won't. Because freedom requires the one thing society has conditioned you to fear above all: being alone with yourself. And yet, buried beneath that fear is something sacred, something ancient, something real. We're getting closer. The next step is not easy, but it's necessary. You've seen what happens when you ignore the emptiness. Now let's explore what happens when you finally decide to rebel against it. So now you know. The emptiness isn't a glitch in the system. It is the system's silent truth. But here's where the story can shift. If emptiness is the messenger, what is it asking you to hear? It's asking you to stop running, to stop pretending that your soul is a problem to be optimized, outsourced, or silenced. It's asking you to remember something primal, that you are not here to perform. You are here to experience, to feel joy without posting it, to feel pain without numbing it, to live, not just exist through metrics, likes, and deadlines. This rebellion, it's not loud, it's not glamorous, it won't be trending. It's silent and sacred. It begins the moment you decide to sit with your own silence, without distraction, without expectation. And you will feel fear. You will feel discomfort. That's how you'll know you're close. Because what lies beneath the emptiness is truth. You'll begin to rediscover your why, not the one society handed you, but the one you buried beneath obligation and approval. You'll learn that meaning isn't found. It's created in small acts of presence, in real conversations, in doing things that no one claps for, but still feed your soul. This is not an easy path, but it is a liberating one. And here's the paradox. The more you face the void, the more whole you become. Because inside that void is the part of you that never wanted a perfect life, only a real one. So here's the invitation. Turn off the noise. Sit in the silence. Ask yourself the questions you've avoided. Reclaim your humanity in a world that profits from your disconnection. You were never broken. You were just buried. And now, it's time to come home. If this video resonated with something inside you, leave a comment saying, "I felt this." Let's create a space where truth has a place. And if you want more people to hear this message, share this video. Someone might need exactly this today.